If so, sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt my Link's Awakening stuff, but I'm not seeing anything in live chat right now, which is pretty weird. Usually I see stuff. I might have to restart the stream. I'm not seeing anything in my chat box. Interesting. Okay. Stuff's starting to pop up now. Okay. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt the chat. Hey, Red Hood, can you hear me okay? Because I see you pop up there. I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay. All right. Anyways, sorry. I just wanted to make sure. Usually, whenever I first start, there's stuff already in chat. So I was like, wait a second. Hopefully, you can hear me. Anyways, back to Link's Awakening. Best-selling debut ever for a Zelda remake game. And it's also the biggest Switch launch of 2019 so far, surpassing Super Mario Maker 2. Now, I had came out early and said that in the US market, that is exactly what I was seeing. So whenever I saw that in the UK, that was really encouraging to me. It meant that the data that I was seeing was right on track, right on point. And also that not only is it doing amazing in the US, it seems to be doing very strong in the UK as well. So Zelda off to a tremendous start in Western markets. We just got Japan sales just a little bit ago, earlier this morning. And it's doing well in Japan. It's not having the kind of debut and success that we're seeing in the West. You know, it's not like we saw in the UK, for example, the best debut ever for a Zelda remake. You know, we did not see that in Japan. There were remakes that have sold better over there. I believe Majora's Mask 3DS, for example, beat it, and Ocarina of Time 3DS. But it still did good, right? It's still a solid debut. It's doing well in Japan. It's just not having that kind of breakout, crazy launch that we're seeing in Western markets, which isn't too shocking. Zelda is typically, besides like Breath of the Wild, which was hugely successful in Japan, it's not as strong in Japan as it is in Western markets. So I don't think that is super shocking. In terms of Switch Lite, what I've been seeing, the West has been a good launch. So I'm trying to think how best to describe this. You know, it's doing very well. No reason to think that it's doing poorly or it's not, expanding Switch user base. It absolutely is. But from what I've seen, at least, it's not having quite the tremendous launch that we're seeing, in Japan. Japan launched with 178,000 lights sold in its first week, and the Switch itself was well over 200,000 combined. So that's a multi-fold increase, from what its normally weekly performances. The West, it is having a boost, right? From what I'm seeing, and this is just a totally rough estimate. Don't take this as gospel, until NPD comes out. But from what I'm seeing, like on a weekly basis, like for last week, it basically doubled Switch sales, roughly, give or take a bit. So it didn't seem to impact the standard Switch at all. Didn't seem to have any cannibalization of those sales, which is good. It means the regular Switch is still going to sell just as strong as it normally would, and the Lite's expanded market. So it's doing well, not quite the insane launch we see in Japan, which again makes sense because Japan really loves their handheld consoles. So it makes sense that it would be even stronger in Japan than it is in the West, but it's doing good in general all over the place. We've got a couple comments popping up in here. If you have any questions about anything, The Last of Us, Zelda, Borderlands, anything that you want to ask or anything that you want to talk about, start dropping those questions, and I'm going to start answering them. I just wanted to go over Zelda right off the top because I know a lot of people have been curious about that. All right, Red Hood here has the very first question. Do you think The Last of Us Part 2 gameplay video will overshadow Jedi Fallen Order tomorrow? Yo, that's a very good question, Red Hood. I haven't seen necessarily a massive amount of excitement and discussion on the Jedi Fallen Order trailer. It seems to be kind of flying under the radar. So that's a very, very good question. Last of Us 2 is dominating discussion online right now. As I tweeted out just a little bit ago, and also, I saw a thread on this on Reset Era, and other places people are talking about it. Last of Us Part 2 right now is number 2 trending on YouTube, and it's already done 2.6 million views, which is amazing. It's doing awesome. It hasn't actually beaten Death Stranding's metrics. So Death Stranding is still the fastest viewed exclusive trailer for the year so far. It hit 2.1 million views in its first 6 hours, and then in its first 24 hours, it did almost 5 million. So that was a crazy performance by Death Stranding. But The Last of Us 2 is doing amazing. It's still putting up huge metrics. And I think part of the reason that Death Stranding trailer was so huge was that was the first time we really saw gameplay of it. It wasn't like a super long segment like we saw, out of Tokyo Game Show, but it was the first time we really got to look at gameplay. So I think so many people were curious just what the heck Death Stranding even is, that's why that trailer blew up the way it did. Whereas The Last of Us Part 2, it's kind of a known commodity. Obviously, it's going to be doing a ton of new stuff. But what I mean is, it's not a new IP. People have played the original The Last of Us. So while people are really excited for the trailer, it wasn't one of those things where it was like, what even is this game? Whereas Death Stranding, I think that's why you saw the crazy metrics Death Stranding put up with that trailer. But yeah, that definitely could affect Star Wars. If they come out with a really strong trailer, I'm sure it's going to get attention. But it does seem to be flying under the radar, doesn't it? Which is kind of surprising for a Star Wars game and a big single player game. It was getting a lot of attention earlier this year, but this new trailer seems to not have the same kind of excitement for it as we saw earlier. I would agree with that. Comatose. Hey, Benji, how's it going? It's going good. How are you, Comatose? Thanks for coming to the chat. Red Hood, you should definitely check out Damon X Machina Joy-Cons. It looks really good. I just bought mine from Amazon. Cool. Yeah, that sounds cool. Patrick, hey, everyone. What's up, Patrick? Empty and Full, what's up? Hello. Comatose, I got a question. Do you think the Switch Lite will sell more this holiday than regular Switch? Very good question. It's going to be very interesting to watch how Lite and standard Switch shake out. As I noted, it doesn't seem to be hurting anyone who wasn't here during the first part of the chat. I was kind of talking about Lite sales a little bit, and it doesn't seem to be hurting traditional Switch at all. I have not seen any dip at all in the standard Switch in the US. And out of the numbers that just came out of Japan, it did not hurt there either, right? So Lite is having basically no cannibalization of the standard Switch, which is great news for Nintendo, because it basically means all that Switch base that they were already selling, that's not going down to make room for the Lite. The Lite is just pure growth, at least right now. I can't speak to how it's going to be in the future, but right now, Lite seems to be pure market share growth for them. That's it. It's just going to new people that did not have a Switch in general, and it's not hurting the standard one. So it's not taking sales away from that. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. Japan's launch is hugely impressive for Lite. Over the holidays, I will not be surprised at all if the standard Lite outsells or if the Lite outsells the standard in Japan. For the kind of launch we just saw out of it, it very well could happen in Japan. In the US, and UK and other Western markets, I'm still not sure. Lite out of the gate is doing well, but it's not doing as well by percentage as it's doing in Japan. My hunch is that Lite is going to do really well this holiday, but the standard Switch will still be the main SKU in Western markets. Not for sure. Don't take that as gospel. We haven't even had a full week of Lite data on the market yet. So my opinion on this could radically change as I see more data over the coming weeks. But just my initial early hunch is that the standard regular Switch still remains your main SKU, but Lite doesn't hurt at all. That Lite just still sells really, really well, sells well with Pokemon, well with gift givers. So your base Switch is still a huge number, and then your Lite's a very good number as well. So that's just my hunch from early metrics. But like I said, could change my mind once we get into the holidays and I start seeing, that ramp up. All right. Trunks, with Switch sales roughly doubling in the US, what sort of numbers are we talking about? Okay. So again, take that as a rough estimate. Don't take that as gospel. But it's looking very good. I don't know for a fact that you'll see double year over year growth when NPD comes out, because keep in mind, the first, chunk of the month that was tracked did not have the light on the market. It's only going to be these last few weeks of tracking. But big, right? It's going to be very big, very, very healthy. This holiday, I am fully anticipating a record-setting performance from the Switch for this entire generation that we've had so far. I expect the biggest holiday ever for a console. Not period. Basically Wii and DS, it's not going to beat the Wii and DS performance in my opinion. But in terms of this current gen, PS4, Xbox One, expect huge sales this holiday, and really, really strong sales, even in September and October as well. But I can't give exact numerical units there. Trunks WD, I can't. That's all NDA stuff. So whenever you're asking what sort of numbers, I cannot say a unit. I really can't. I have to protect myself and other people too as well. I'm sorry. I wish I could say more. I really do. Brubby. Hey, Benji, question. What do you think will be the year-to-date Switch 2019? Sorry, I'm trying to read that question. Do you mean how much do I think it's going to sell, like total? I will have to look into that a little bit more. I really am not 100% sure on a year to date, like what it's going to sell in totality for 2019. I haven't really made a full projection yet on where I think holiday is going to go because I wanted to see light sales for a couple weeks before I did that. So I will have a number for you soon in terms of how much I think it's going to sell for the entire year. But I didn't want to necessarily do all those calculations before I saw light because that was such a wild change for its market share. I really needed to see how that was going to perform first. Wound Up Penguin. Hey, everyone. What's up, Wound Up? Good to see you here. Patrick, with PlayStation mentioning that wouldn't talk about PS5 in State of Play, are we actually closer than we think to a PS5 first talk? Good question. It's soon. It's definitely soon. No doubt about it. I don't think this year. It's really looking like there's going to be no PSX this year. Not insider information on that. Who knows? Sony could come out and announce it, but it just does not feel like that, right? We're already about to start October, and there's been no word on it. And I feel like if it was going to be a big event again, because, the last time they did PSX, it was a lot more low-key. I just don't think there's going to be a PSX this year. Originally, I thought maybe they might tease PS5 at PSX and then do like a full reveal early next year. Now I don't even think we're going to get the PSX tease. I'm thinking just, next year, February or March is your full PS5 showcase. I've seen some people being like, now with The Last of Us 2 release date, being in February, does that mean we won't get a PS5 reveal in February? Does that mean that people will, because they don't want to harm The Last of Us Part 2 sales? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it would hurt The Last of Us 2 at all. I think they could do a PS5 reveal event literally 2 days before The Last of Us Part 2 came out, and it would have zero effect on its sales because that game is so big. People do not want it spoiled. Most people that want to play that game are going to be in right off the bat. There will be some that wait to play it on PS5 because, as we know, PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible. And also, as we know, I'm sure there's going to be enhancements for these games on next gen. So you will have some people waiting, but a really heavy story-based game like this, I think a lot of people are going to want to be in there quick so they don't get it spoiled for them what happens. I don't think it would hurt it. Now, maybe they're not. Maybe it's going to be March, but I don't think just because The Last of Us 2 is in February, that now means they can't talk about PS5 in February. I've just seen some people theorize that. I don't think so. February or March, you'll see it. I'll be surprised if they talk about it this year, but I do think Microsoft is going to talk about Scarlet at XO19. All right. Brubby again. Benji, year-to-date Switch 2019, 8 million possible. Sure. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely possible. Comatose, cool. Thanks for the insights. You're welcome. Z-Star, hi, Benji. You mentioned tracking the new Amiibo sales on Twitter. Not a lot of people talk about that anymore. Anything noteworthy you can say about that? Yeah, cool. I'm glad you brought this up because there actually is something pretty wild about this I can slightly touch on. Can't go too much because of, again, all this stuff's under wraps. Believe me, I wish I could be just open, but companies don't like it. But anyways, the end of your question, I will touch on this. Maybe which ones sell the best. So one thing that was crazy that I didn't talk about on Twitter, but I have talked about it a little bit with some other people, but I have not talked about it on Twitter, is that the Link amiibo, the new one that came out with Link's Awakening, it put up insane numbers, and the amount of revenue it generated was crazy for a little plastic figure. It was crazy. The attach rate was crazy. Like how many people that were buying Link's Awakening were buying the amiibo directly with it, hand in hand. I can tell you it was very high. We're not talking like 10% of buyers or 20% of buyers. Higher than that. I'm not going to give you an exact percentage, but higher, much higher than that. So yeah, the sales numbers for that Link amiibo are incredible. The revenue it's generating is incredible, which think about how high margin that is, right? It can't be super expensive to develop these projects, these amiibos, and to create them. Like the actual manufacturing cost can't be much. It's not free, right? It's still an investment, but it's not a massive investment like a game is. So yeah, it perfectly makes sense. Whenever I was seeing some of the data that was coming in on these amiibo sales, I really was paying attention this time around. Some other amiibo launches in the past I've kind of, not paid super hardcore attention to, but I really wanted to see what they would do here. Yeah, makes sense. Makes perfect sense why Nintendo keeps releasing these, especially I have seen a big dip on amiibo in between launches, right? They're not as in demand as they were like when they first came out just every single month. But definitely when a new game drops, like a brand new title, and there's an amiibo that goes with it, that's very smart on Nintendo's part. Very, very smart. Generates a lot of money. Dom, hi, hello. The power of price may get people. Denzel Martin, what are your 2020 predictions for the 3 platform holders? Cool. Good question, Denzel. Do you mean like hardware, software, general thoughts? I'll go a little bit into what I'm expecting for hardware, because that might be probably what you're expecting me to answer there. Switch, I fully expect to dominate the year before next gen gets here, just because PlayStation 4 and Xbox One will be so long in the tooth and about to wrap up their generations as next gen launches. So I'm expecting pretty rough sales for Xbox and PlayStation. This year has not been kind to either one of them, though I am seeing a resurgence of the PS4 lately. So that's nice for Sony. It's not dropping near as hard as it was earlier in this year. Earlier in this year, the drops were rough, but they've had a bit of a resurgence lately. So, with The Last of Us and Final Fantasy VII Remake and Cyberpunk, there is some huge software. So I do think that, especially if Sony times it with a price drop, right? If we get a permanent PS4 price drop right around the time The Last of Us hits, or Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think they actually may be in a decent position next year. Xbox is probably going to be really rough, though. So those 2 hardware, I would just go in anticipating not huge hardware years for them until we hit, the very end of the year for next gen. And Switch is going to have a fantastic year next year. Trunks WD, sounds like Nintendo will blow away its Switch forecast for the current fiscal year. Yes, Trunks WD, I absolutely think so. Whenever they came out with their fiscal year estimate, I thought it felt very conservative, but I think that was intentional because last year they missed their forecast. So I think they did not want to repeat that 2 years in a row. That would have looked really bad if they, missed their forecast for last year, then they forecast this year and missed it again. Investors and the general public who do pay attention to these things would start to get very nervous. So I always thought that their forecast for this fiscal year was soft, was really conservative, but I think that was intentional. That way they're like, listen, this is a number we're very confident we'll hit and more than likely surpass, and we won't have to deal with the headlines we did last year. So yeah, I agree though. They'll probably smash their forecast. SN, hello there. Any predictions for the holiday hardware sales in the US and Japan? Thank you. Hello, SN. Yeah, Switch expecting the biggest holiday of this generation for the Switch. PlayStation and Xbox, I'm both expecting to be down year over year, probably by a pretty good margin, unless they have some kind of like crazy deals. I'm sure we'll see PS4 again at $199. They've done that the last what game will be bundled with it, who knows. But I would still expect them both to be down year over year. Would love to be wrong on that. I love a healthy market, but yeah, I'm not expecting like crazy Xbox or PlayStation sales, but massive Switch numbers. Red Hood, do you think the next Batman game will get a trailer at Game Awards or just a random day? Good question. So I thought there was a good chance, and I think a lot of people thought there was a good chance we were going to see Batman yesterday at State of Play, just because they did, 2 days of teasing right before State of Play. So a lot of people were thinking, okay, this is it. We're going to get the new Batman game at State of Play. Why else would you tease not 1, but 2 days in a row right before it? And it was not there. So it would feel weird to me for that to be a Game Awards announcement. And let me explain why. Only because we've started the teasing now in September, and Game Awards is not until December. Usually the standard practice in games is whenever you start a tease, like not just like a random interview and you drop a comment, ooh, we're working on something. When you actually start putting things on social media like they are, usually that means you're pretty close. You're pretty imminent to an announcement, to a reveal, right? Maybe a couple weeks, at most. It's rare. It's months, like very, very rare. It can happen, but it is not standard practice. Standard practice, you drop those teasers, you get everyone excited, you get everyone talking, and then within a couple weeks, you blow out a big announcement. So my hunch is that this is just going to be a random announcement. Maybe it's going to be a cover of Game Informer article. Maybe it's just going to be, nowadays you can announce games in so many different ways. They can do it on a Twitch stream. They can build up excitement there. There's a ton of different things they can do. So my guess, if I was just guessing, is this is a random announcement. Game Awards would make sense to me if it was closer, and it still might be. I would just be surprised if that was their strategy, to tease now and then wait, 2 months to reveal the game. That would be strange. It wouldn't be the way people normally do it. Denzel Martin, I mostly meant software. Oh, okay. That's fun. I'm particularly concerned on Nintendo since after Astral Chain, all of their major franchises, and I don't know if third parties will continue to support it once next gen starts. Cool, Denzel. So you want some predictions for software for the holidays? Okay, or for the big 3. Was that holidays that you were asking me? Let me scroll up to your original question. 2020 predictions. Okay, so you want to know about 2020 software predictions. Okay, so third party is going to be massive next year for PlayStation and Xbox. Cyberpunk, I'm fully expecting to sell 15 plus million copies. I think that might even hit 20 plus million copies. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm expecting to do 10 million. That's right, 10 million for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm expecting The Last of Us Part 2 to be a 20 million seller. I've talked about for the first half of the year in software. I really do. And including Animal Crossing in there, that's another, 10 plus million seller, maybe even 15 million seller. New Leaf, Animal Crossing New Leaf did over 12 million on the 3DS. So as we've seen, Switch is selling software at a much higher volume, their core franchises, than any Nintendo platform before. That's right, even better than the Wii for many of them. There's a few outliers still that would sell better on Wii. For example, Mario Kart and New Super Mario Brothers. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is doing amazing on the Switch, but I don't know if it will hit what Mario Kart did on the Wii. It might, but I'm not 100% sure. But in general, Zelda's breaking records ever for a Nintendo system. I could go on and on. So many games have broken records on Switch for their franchises. So I have no reason to believe Animal Crossing will do anything less than 12 million. And more than likely, it's going to do 15 plus million. So Q1, Q2 is absurd. I'm a little bit scared for a couple games in there, like Watch Dogs Legion. I think that game looks amazing. Really, I do. And I went into that when they were first announcing it. I don't know if I'm going to be excited for Watch Dogs Legion, just because the concept seemed weird until I saw it. And then I thought it looked really good. But it has so much competition. I'm a little bit scared for anything that's not those big 4 to 5, because you also have Marvel's Avengers in there. And that's the one that could be 10 million plus. You would think it would. It's Avengers, right? But I just don't know. That's the one I'm most unsure of is how Avengers is going to perform, because it could be amazing, but a lot of what we've seen has had very mixed feedback. So it will be interesting to see how Avengers performs, but there's a lot of games that could get lost in the shuffle. So it's a scary time next year. If you're launching early next year and you're not Cyberpunk, The Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII Remake, or Animal Crossing, I would be a little nervous, just a little bit, that you might get blown out, buried under this massive tsunami of games that's hitting right before next gen launches. You know, you're clearly seeing publishers be like, get our projects out. Everything that's left for this year, they're just like, get it out the door before next gen hits. That's really what you're seeing in Q1 and Q2, because next gen's the second half of next year. So people are just trying to get everything out the door. But yeah, in terms of Nintendo, the rest of their lineup, we don't really know. When's Bayonetta hitting? When's, Metroid hitting? When's, there's a lot of unknowns for Nintendo's software output for next year. So that's the hardest one for me to talk about for 2020, just because we don't really know their release slate. So hard for me to make a lot of predictions for Nintendo, other than I think Animal Crossing is going to do mega gigantic numbers. Give me just 1 second here, everyone. Sorry, I'm getting some text messages. I need to make sure it's just nothing big. Oh, it's nothing. Where are we at? We're at 25 minutes. I'll go for like another 10. If you've got 10 minutes worth of questions and content, we'll go for about another 10, and then we'll wrap up the chat. Thanks to everyone for being here. I'll chill for just a second. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you are not subscribed already. Helps the channel out a massive amount. All right, let's go to the next question here. Carnegie Ghost. Hey, Benji, what do you think we will hear more about Ghost of Tsushima? Ooh, good question. And when do you think we will get another Ratchet and Clank game? Okay, yeah, this is two things that'll be fun to talk about. So Ghost of Tsushima, I put a tweet out there just the other day. I don't remember what day, but I'm theorizing here. This is not insider information. I'm theorizing that game may be cross-gen at launch. I think it might come out with PS5 launch, just because we've heard like nothing. That game has been radio silence since it was unveiled, like the first gameplay that we saw, which makes me think it's not very close. We know it's definitely going to be after February now, because we have The Last of Us in February. You would think if this was like a May game or even June, they would have started to talk about it. You would think, just because we already have a lot of games announced that are coming out in that time frame. This could be a summer game, but my theorizing is, this is the main reason why I think it's cross-gen at launch. Let's say that game was targeting a June or July launch on PS4 only. At that point, should maybe just hold on to it for like 2 more months and wait for next gen. Like, if you hold on to it for like 2 months and launch it with PS5, it will have way more attention on it, because it's now a launch title. You're hyping that up. You're getting all those people going out there buying a PS5 on day one to go out and get this game. I think it's cross-gen now at launch. I still think it's going to be on PS4, of course. I'm not sitting here telling you, oh, no, it just moved to PS5. I just think that might be a cross-gen game right off the bat. It would make sense. It would help the marketing out a lot. And due to when that game is hitting, like I said, clearly not until summer at the earliest, might as well hold on to it for a little bit and launch it with next gen. In terms of Ratchet and Clank, you're definitely going to get another one. Sony talked about it, and even whenever they acquired Insomniac, that they consider Ratchet and Clank a very important franchise. The last one, the reboot, did very, very well in sales. So definitely another one coming, probably on next gen, though. I don't think that's going to be a PS4 game. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a PlayStation 5 title. So you'll definitely get one, probably fairly soon, because it's a smaller project than Spider-Man 2 is going to be. And, Spider-Man 2 is definitely next gen, and probably not until 2021, 2022 or so. Ratchet games is going to be a much smaller project for them, and it's also been longer since Ratchet came out, so they've probably already been working on that. So you'll probably get a Ratchet game, 2021, I would say, as a guess. Could even be a launch title for PlayStation 5, but probably like 2021, first half of the year or sometime that year. That's just a guess. Carnage again, do you think E3 will die for good after 2 years from 2020 since all publishers moved to their own cheaper Twitch or YouTube announcements? Good question. I fully expect E3 2020 to be huge. I think Sony is going to be back for E3 2020. I'm very confident in it that they're going to be back next year. They're going to be showing, a bunch of PS5 stuff. Xbox is going to be there with Scarlet. So I expect next year's E3 at least to be huge, like a very big one. I think it's going to be the biggest E3 we've had in a while, though there's been some weird stuff going on with the ESA and some of the paperwork and discussion that's come out of there that's a little, weird. Not exactly thrilled with some of the stuff they're talking about. But I do think it's going to be very big because you're going to get that next gen hype fest going on. But after that, it will be interesting to see how it goes. That, like you said, it's much cheaper. That's one reason why you're seeing State of Play. A lot of people say they miss the big Sony conferences, and I totally get it. Believe me, I do too. But it is so much cheaper for them to just make a State of Play than to do a huge stage show. Huge stage show, you got to pay for all this production. You got to pay for the venue. You got to do, there's just so much more cost flying people in and flying people back out. It's an expensive ordeal to put on these stage shows. And that's why you're seeing them start to do these State of Plays. They can just pump those out. They're real cheap for them. The newest one had very minimal graphics. It's just kind of boom, 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 getting games out. Some people like that style. Some people don't. I thought the new State of Play had a better flow than the last couple. A lot of people have been joking online how it was basically a straight copy of Nintendo Direct style. And I will not say it's not. It literally, the new one, someone put out a GIF of State of Play and Nintendo Direct like on top of each other, and it looked darn near identical, except for the coloring. But you know what? What do they say? They say like I don't remember the exact terminology, but copying is basically the best compliment you can give. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm fine with them copying the Direct style because I think Nintendo Directs work well. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how E3 evolves over the next few years and how they can keep it going. I will say though, 2020 should be huge, so you can at least be excited for E3 2020. All right. DT, E3 2020 will be interesting to say the least, especially with the recent ESA controversy. Yeah, exactly. Just like I was touching on, the ESA thing is a little bit worrying on some of the direction they want to take some things, but we'll see. DT, marketing is a bit shaky for Avengers. I agree. Marketing has felt weird for that game literally the entire time. I wonder if something's going on behind the doors there. I wonder if that game's had a troubled development cycle. Keep in mind, we were originally supposed to see that game like when they first teased it much earlier than we ended up seeing it. They put out that first teaser trailer. They said more news is going to come. I think they said by the end of 2018, actually, I believe. I could be wrong on that. I'm trying to remember the date, but I think they said 2018, like late in the year, we were going to get info. And we didn't get info until 2019. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what's going on with Avengers and if it turns out good or not. Z-Star, I think one game people are underestimating this year is Luigi's Mansion 3. Yes, I want to go into this. Yes, Z-Star, because I was underestimating it. The second game sold over 6 million on 3DS. It's going to surprise people. Thanks for answering the Amiibo question, by the way. Okay, so Z-Star. I underestimated Luigi's Mansion 3 because I did not remember that game doing that well. And someone had just told me this recently. This was like a couple weeks back, or not even a couple weeks, it was a couple days back. I did not remember that Luigi's Mansion 2 sold over 6 million units. Like, that is crazy impressive for a standalone Luigi game. Like, 6 million is a big number. I was thinking Luigi's Mansion 3 was going to do like that 5 million range. And then someone reminded me of that was 6 million. And I was like, holy cow. Okay. I need to readjust my expectations for Luigi's Mansion 3, because if 2 can do 6 million, 3 will do much better than that. So yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are underestimating Luigi's Mansion 3. If I was underestimating it, and I'm pretty clued in on sales, I'm not the best, but I'm pretty clued in on it, then a lot of people are probably super underestimating it. All right, I will go. So we're at 35. I'll answer the questions that are left on here, and then we'll call the chat. So I'm going to answer everything here still, but then we'll call it. Wound Up Penguin, the general consensus seems to be that last night's Inside Xbox was very disappointing. Do you think so? Yeah, Wound Up Penguin, I'm just not feeling the Inside Xbox format. I hate to say that. I do like Xbox for sure. Xbox gets a lot of flack online and a lot of, negative comments. And I try to avoid that. I try to not be a super negative person in general. If you notice on my Twitter feed and things like that, I'm not above saying I don't like something or something like that. But there's so much negativity out there that other people can do that. I try to mostly stick to things that feel positive to me. But I will say, I just don't think Inside Xbox works. Like the format just doesn't. It's like this big long, it's too long. Inside Xbox is really long. The segments are too drawn out, really. People nowadays, it seems like with like a hit, right? Just like you see with Nintendo Directs, just like you see Sony now doing with State of Play. Outside of like a major conference, I feel like people want these shows to be quick hits, hit me with the news really fast. I don't need just like a whole bunch of extra stuff around it. So I hope to see them evolve that in the future. And I hope that they start, maybe spread it out more. If you don't have like big announcements for it, then just don't do one, right? Like maybe do an Inside Xbox once every 4 months, 5 months. Like State of Play, there was a pretty long gap between the two. And, the new one didn't have exactly a ton of huge announcements outside of The Last of Us, but they still had The Last of Us, right? They still had that huge trailer and announcement date. Inside Xbox, they just keep doing these, I feel like, when they don't have something really big to show, something really. So I would like them to do fewer Inside Xboxes and try to hit the news a little bit quicker. That's my opinion on it. All right. Brigadier Williams Wilderbeest, always a refreshing stream, sir. Cheers. Thank you, Brigadier. I love doing these streams. You all are always so kind to me. You all bring great questions. I literally love doing these. That's why I do them so much. If I didn't like doing them, you would barely ever see them. But I've been doing, about 2 of these a week now. So thanks. You all make this stream just as good as I do. So I wouldn't have near the good questions or the feedback or be able to talk back, without you all here. Wound Up Penguin, do you think, okay, he was just correcting. Sorry. Leonard, hi. Any news from Fire Emblem sales? Thanks, Leonardo. It's looking to be the biggest Fire Emblem game ever. So Japan sales have been a little disappointing, I will say. Part of that might be due to the voucher program, but Japan sales have not been very impressive for Fire Emblem. It's still tracking quite a bit behind, Fates and Birthright and Conquest. But the rest of the world, like the West, the US, the UK, Fire Emblem's doing incredible. So it's going to end up the best-selling Fire Emblem game ever. It's going to be a massive success. So that's great news. Japan, though, has been a little, and that could be because the vouchers have kind of screwed up how a lot of Japanese sales look for Nintendo first party. So hard to tell what Japan's actual sales are, but it's doing great. Just so you know, Fire Emblem is doing incredible. DC Hope, XO19 is big. Last year's event was disappointing. I think it's going to be. I think XO19, Microsoft's actually going to talk about Scarlet a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a huge blowout. I don't think you're going to get, a look at what the actual console looks like and the price, but I won't be surprised if Microsoft shows a Scarlet game there. That'd be a perfect place to announce Fable, right? It's taking place in London. Playground is based in the UK. Fable is a game that, it has a lot. It takes a lot from British, humor and aesthetic. So it would seem if you were ever going to announce Fable for next gen anywhere, XO19 is literally the place. So I'll be very disappointed if you don't see Fable announced there. It will seem weird to me to not do it there. That's your perfect spot. Phil Spencer is going to be there. I feel like if Phil's going to be there and the whole main Xbox team's going out there, I think XO19 is going to probably be pretty big. Wound Up Penguin, my question is, do you think Microsoft should change to a pre-recorded format like Nintendo Direct? Yeah, Wound Up, I do. I think a pre-recorded would be better. They don't necessarily have to go as like bare bones necessarily as State of Play, for example, is. It does seem like Microsoft likes having people talking and having, some comments around it as well. So I'm not against them still doing some of that, but probably a pre-recorded, much shorter segment would be a lot better than the live format that they're doing. So I think they can still keep the general, premise, but just make it shorter, pre-recorded, and quick hitting. All right. Do you think DT? All right. Sorry, we still have questions popping in, so I'm still answering them. I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind the stream going a little bit long at the moment, but there's a lot of questions, big questions still dropping. So sorry about that. DT, do you think Square Enix should hold off releasing Outriders, new IP, with next-gen consoles versus summer 2020 late-gen release? Good question. We've seen like nothing on Outriders yet, so it's hard for me to really say. I thought that the CG trailer they showed looked really cool. Like, I feel like that flew under the radar, but I think that looked awesome. Like, just what they were teasing, I was really on board with it. And, People Can Fly, the developers, the people that did Bulletstorm. Bulletstorm had such fun combat. I'm excited for that game. I think Outriders could be really cool. It's definitely going to be cross-gen at least. Trust me, this game will get next-gen version. If it's releasing summer 2020, it will be cross-gen. So I don't think it really hurts it if they launch it beforehand being a third-party game like that, but hard to say without fully seeing what the game is like. Brigadier William, hi Benji. What other game aside Horizon Zero Dawn do you think Guerrilla Games is working on? This is a total guess, but I'm pretty sure that Guerrilla is making another Killzone game. Whether that's a reboot, a la like what we saw with God of War, where they reboot, it was a sequel and a reboot at the same time, or like Ratchet and Clank. And there's one main reason I think this. There's a main reason I think that they're making a Killzone game. Guerrilla hired the guy that was behind, I think it was the creative director, could be wrong here, but it was one of these very high positions on Rainbow Six Siege, a first-person shooter competitive game. I literally see no reason why you would hire him for Horizon. I see no reason. Not because he's not insanely talented. He clearly is. And Horizon might have a multiplayer element, but do any of us think it's going to be anything like Rainbow Six Siege? Like, no. It's going to be a third person, if there's even multiplayer in Horizon 2. It's going to be some kind of like third person combat type thing. It would seem very strange to selectively hire someone behind Rainbow Six Siege to lead the multiplayer in Horizon. What would make more sense is to hire him to make the multiplayer for Killzone. So this is a complete guess. I could be wrong on that. I do think they're working on a first-person shooter, though. Whether that's going to be another Killzone game or a brand new IP, I don't know. My hunch, though, is Killzone. I think they're making another Killzone game as well as Horizon 2. DMV fan, people have been complaining about Fallen Order's marketing and how people aren't aware of it, even though it's a huge IP. Are you expecting a big rollout soon, DMV fan? I touched on this earlier. Yeah, I'm just going to answer these questions, and then that's it because it's been a long stream. Yeah, they're going to have to start rolling that big, marketing plan out because that game's getting pretty darn close. It's getting pretty close, and yeah, it seems to be flying under the radar. I talked about this a little bit earlier, DMV fan, in the video. There's a new trailer tomorrow, and I'm not seeing a ton of hype for it. Ruger, hey Benji, have you noticed the surprising lack of YouTube views for Final Fantasy VII Remake trailers, gameplay, etc.? Ever since E3 2019, I've been surprised how low the YouTube views have been. So, yes, I have noticed that. They're not like super low, but they're also not super high. Yeah, it's not tracking like a Last of Us or a Death Stranding or anything like that in terms of social metrics. I don't think that's that reflective of sales. I think it's going to outsell Final Fantasy 15, and 15 was huge for a JRPG. So I do agree that it hasn't done huge metrics on trailer views or things like that, but I wouldn't take that as like the end of the world. I think it's going to do really well. All right, we got 3 more questions here, and then we're wrapping it up. Benji, do you think The Last of Us 2 will outsell The Last of Us? I mean, there's a lot of competition in H1 2020. Yes, I do, Benji. I do think long term because I think this game's going to have a healthy life on the PlayStation 5 as well. So while it does have a lot of competition early in that year, early next year is insanely stacked. It's going to do huge on PS4, of course. But I also think, like I said, a very long life, very healthy sell through on PlayStation 5 as well. This game's probably going to get ray tracing and, whatever next gen technology in the PlayStation 5 version. So it's still going to keep selling even next gen. So I do expect it to outsell The Last of Us 1 as long as it's good. I mean, it'd be shocking to me if this game is bad, but as long as it's good, yeah. Ruger, but then you mentioned that Final Fantasy VII Remastered is tracking well, so it doesn't seem. Yeah, it is tracking well. So it's just there's not always a 1-to-1 ratio between trailer views and Twitter metrics and sales. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. They are useful to look at, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Remake's going to do really well. Doesn't seem to be an issue. It's crazy that big E3 video at 2.5 million. Yep, I agree. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the stream. I love talking to you all as always. Thank you for bringing the amazing questions. We had so much to talk about today. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you do not already. And I will see you either in the next stream here on YouTube or on Twitter. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.